Welcome back, everybody, to another deep dive.
Yeah.
Today, we are looking into B-Spatial, this platform that is using VR to help young people with mental health and career development.
Yeah.
And we're really focusing on that 16 to 21 age range,
Right.
when they're really kind of figuring out who they are.
It is a time of immense pressure and rapid change.
No, absolutely.
So,
And this is where B-Spatial comes in. And I think one of the really interesting things about this platform is that they're combining virtual reality with this thing called neurophenomenology.
yes.
And now, I know that might sound a little intimidating to some people,
Yeah.
but stick with us. Our expert is going to break it down for us, and you'll see why this is so innovative.
I'm happy to unpack that.
Okay. Bye.
The developers of B-Spatial, they've really identified a crucial need here, particularly with the increasing rates of mental health challenges that young people are facing.
Right. Let's start with the basics.
Right.
What exactly is B-Spatial?
So B-Spatial is this VR-based platform with interactive modules and gamification elements and personalized goal setting.
Okay.
And essentially, it allows young people to step into a virtual world and really practice real-life situations and build skills.
I see. I see. And it's interesting that they've chosen to focus on three distinct groups. They're looking at employed youth who are facing workplace stress, unemployed youth who need to build skills and confidence, and then disadvantaged youth who might be facing even more unique barriers. What was it about those specific groups that made the developers of B-Spatial kind of want to zero in on them?
I think each of these groups presents a specific set of challenges that often intersect with mental health.
Right.
So, for example, employed youth might be dealing with workplace stress or trying to figure out, how to set boundaries or
Right.
deal with difficult colleagues, all while navigating the demands of a new job.
Absolutely. And then on the flip side, you have these unemployed youth who might be facing anxiety around like job searching or going to interviews,
Yeah,
or even just a lack of confidence in their own abilities.
exactly.
Yeah.
And so B-Spatial aims to provide them with a safe space to practice those skills
Okay.
and get feedback and build that confidence.
Yeah. And what about disadvantaged youth? What are some of those unique barriers that they're often encountering?
Yeah, so this group often faces systemic challenges. Things like limited access to resources,
Mm-hmm.
socioeconomic disparities, or even discrimination.
Right.
And so B-Spatial is seeking to kind of address some of those inequities by providing a level playing field
Okay.
where they can develop essential skills and really access opportunities that they might not have otherwise.
Now, I have to admit, when I first saw the materials on B-Spatial, the term neurophenomenology really caught my eye. Can you kind of demystify that for us?
Sure.
What exactly are we talking about here?
Yeah, it sounds complex, but it's actually a pretty simple idea.
Okay.
Neurophenomenology explores the connection between our brain activity
Okay.
and our lived experiences.
Okay.
So our thoughts, emotions, perceptions.
I see.
It's really asking the question, how do the workings of our brain
Translate into our conscious awareness.
So it's like looking at the interplay between the physical processes that are happening in our brains and the actual subjective experience of being human.
Exactly.
sorry.
Yeah. And in the context of B-Spatial neurophenomenology is helping us understand how users are reacting emotionally to the VR scenarios.
How do they do that?
So by tracking physiological responses like
Wow.
heart rate or skin conductance,
Interesting.
the platform can gain insights into their emotional state in real time.
So that's where that personalized aspect of B-Spatial comes into play.
Exactly. So let's say a user is practicing a job interview simulation and they start to get anxious.
Okay.
B-Spatial can detect those physiological changes
Uh-huh.
and then adapt the experience accordingly.
Okay.
It might, offer some calming prompts or adjust the difficulty level,
I see.
or even provide a virtual coach to offer support and guidance.
So it's like having a customized support system built right into the platform.
That's the goal.
Yeah. By combining the immersive power of VR with these insights from neurophenomenology,
Yeah.
B-Spatial is really aiming to create a truly personalized and effective approach to mental health and career development.
That is a powerful combination. Now, I'm really curious to hear more about what it's actually like to use B-Spatial.
Yeah.
What can you tell us about the VR experience itself?
Well, imagine putting on a VR headset
Okay.
and stepping into this meticulously designed virtual world.
Okay.
And it's not just about, watching videos or listening to lectures.
All right.
It's about actively engaging in these realistic scenarios.
Can you give us an example of what one of those scenarios might look like?
Sure. Let's say you're working on building confidence in public speaking.
Okay.
You could find yourself standing on a virtual stage
Okay.
in B-Spatial,
Uh-huh.
facing an audience of avatars.
Interesting.
And you have to deliver a presentation,
Oh, wow.
respond to questions, and really manage those nervous butterflies in your stomach.
And it's all happening in this safe space
Exactly.
where there are no real-world consequences.
Right. It's a controlled environment
Yeah.
where they can experiment, make mistakes, and learn from those experiences without the fear of judgment or failure.
I imagine the gamification elements also play a role in making the experience more engaging and motivating.
Yeah.
What can you tell us about those features?
So B-Spatial incorporates elements of game design to keep users engaged and motivated.
Okay.
So this could involve, earning points, unlocking rewards, competing with other users on a leaderboard.
It's about tapping into our natural desire to achieve and have fun while we're learning.
Exactly.
But beyond all the bells and whistles of VR and the gamification, I'm curious to delve deeper into the science behind B-Spatial.
Yeah.
So in part 2, we're going to explore the specific techniques that they're using and the evidence that supports their effectiveness. Stay tuned. Welcome back to our deep dive into B-Spatial. Now, in part 1, we got a good overview of the platform itself.
Right.
But now I kind of want to get into the nitty-gritty. Like, what are the actual techniques that they're using that are making such a big impact?
So one of the key elements is the use of biofeedback.
Okay.
So remember we talked about neurophenomenology
Mm.
being about understanding that link between brain activity and experience.
Right.
So B-Spatial takes that understanding a step further by actually measuring physiological responses during the VR simulations.
Wow.
So we're talking about things like tracking heart rate, breathing patterns, even subtle changes in brainwave activity.
So it's like they're giving us a window into how our body reacts
Yeah.
to these different situations.
Yeah.
Even if it's happening in this virtual world.
Exactly.
But how do they actually use that information to help the users?
So that's where the magic happens. Let's say a young person is practicing a public speaking scenario in VR,
Okay.
and as they step up to that virtual podium, their heart rate starts to spike.
Yeah.
B-Spatial can detect that change and respond in real time.
So it's not just throwing them into the deep end and saying good luck.
Exactly.
It's actually there to provide that support as needed.
Exactly. It can pause the simulation
Wow.
and then offer calming prompts based on mindfulness techniques,
Okay.
or adjust the difficulty level to make sure they stay in that optimal learning zone.
So it's really about creating this really personalized experience
Yeah.
that meets the user exactly where they are.
Exactly.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
You mentioned mindfulness techniques, and those are really having a moment right now.
Yeah.
How does B-Spatial actually integrate those into the VR experience?
So mindfulness is all about paying attention to the present moment without judgment.
Okay.
So it's about becoming aware of our thoughts, our feelings, our bodily sensations, and just learning to observe them without getting swept away.
Okay.
Now, B-Spatial provides a unique opportunity to practice those skills in a very concrete way.
So it's not just reading about it or listening to a guided meditation.
Right.
It's actually experiencing those techniques in action.
Exactly. So let's imagine a user's feeling overwhelmed after a difficult virtual interaction. They can then choose to enter a dedicated mindfulness zone within the VR environment.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, so this could be like a peaceful garden or a serene beach.
I think I'd go for the beach.
Yeah, or even like a futuristic meditation pod,
I like
something like that. And then once they're in that zone,
Okay.
they're guided through a simple mindfulness exercise.
Okay.
So maybe they focus on their breath and just notice the sensation of each inhale and exhale.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe they tune into the sounds around them, just noticing the chirping of birds.
Yeah.
Or the rustling leaves. Whatever it is, the key is to gently bring their attention back to that present moment.
I see.
And this is where that biofeedback that we were talking about comes in.
So they can actually see how their body is responding to these
Yeah.
exercises.
Exactly. They can see their heart rate slowing down as they focus on their breath.
Wow.
Or their breathing becoming more regular as they practice a body scan meditation.
It's like literally watching their stress melt away.
Yeah, and that visual feedback really reinforces the connection between their mind and body
Yeah.
and helps them understand the impact of those techniques.
It's amazing to think that they can actually see the effects of mindfulness in real time.
Right.
It's not just something that they're reading about in a book.
Exactly.
They're actually getting that felt sense of how these practices can really improve their well-being.
Exactly, and that's really the heart of it. It's
Yeah.
about empowering young people to become more aware of their internal states
Uh-huh.
and then to develop the skills to manage those states effectively.
Now, we've talked a lot about, the techniques they're using,
Right.
but it's also important to look at the science behind these claims.
Yeah, for
What
sure.
does the research actually say
Right.
about the effectiveness of these VR-based interventions like B-Spatial?
So there's a growing body of research showing that VR can be a really powerful tool for learning, for training, even for therapeutic intervention. And what B-Spatial does is it builds on that foundation by incorporating the neurophenomenology and personalized biofeedback.
Okay, so it's taking those existing benefits and really kicking them up a notch.
Exactly.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So can you share any examples of the results that they've actually seen? What kind of outcomes are we talking about here?
So the report cites several studies that looked at the impact of B-Spatial on anxiety, emotional regulation, even job interview performance.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. For instance, one study found that young people who used B-Spatial for anxiety management showed significant reductions in self-reported anxiety symptoms.
That's great.
Yeah. And they also scored higher on measures of emotional regulation.
So it's actually translating into real changes.
Exactly.
That's fantastic. And what about the career development side of things?
So another study looked at how B-Spatial impacted job interview performance.
Okay.
And they found that users who had completed the B-Spatial job interview module demonstrated increased confidence,
Okay.
improved communication skills,
Oh.
and were more likely to secure employment compared to a control group.
So it's not just about feeling better. It's actually about achieving those real-world goals.
Exactly.
This is all very promising, but I do want to play devil's advocate here for a moment.
Sure.
Are there any downsides to this technology?
Of course, no technology is without its limitations.
Right.
It's important to remember that B-Spatial is a tool. And like any tool, it can be used in ways that are both helpful and harmful.
That makes sense.
So, for example, it's important to ensure that the VR experiences are designed in a way that avoids triggering trauma
Okay.
or exacerbating existing mental health conditions.
So responsible design is really key here.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What are some other things to keep in mind?
Well, we also need to think about issues of access and equity.
Mm-hmm.
VR technology can be expensive.
Right.
And so we want to make sure that B-Spatial is accessible to all young people, regardless of their socioeconomic background.
That is a super important point because we don't want this to be a technology that just further widens the gap.
Exactly.
Yeah. So making sure that everyone has access is going to be crucial.
Absolutely.
This has been such a fascinating discussion. I'm really eager to hear more about the potential societal impact of B-Spatial.
Yeah.
So in our final segment, we're going to explore what this platform could mean for parents, for educators, and for anyone who cares about the well-being of young people.
Right.
Stay with us. Welcome back to the Deep Dive. So we've spent this whole episode talking about B-Spatial and how it can help young people.
Right.
But now I kind of want to zoom out a bit and think about the big picture.
Yeah.
Like, what kind of impact could a platform like this have on society as a whole?
Well, I think if B-Spatial delivers on its promises, it could be a real game changer.
Yeah.
Think about the rising rates of mental health issues we're seeing among young people, anxiety, depression, stress,
Right.
and the fact that access to affordable and effective support is often limited.
Yeah, absolutely.
So B-Spatial could really provide that early intervention and personalized support in a way that's engaging and accessible for young people.
So instead of waiting until someone is already in crisis,
Right.
we can actually give them the tools to build that resilience and mental well-being
Exactly.
from a much younger age.
Yeah.
Now, what about the impact on education?
Yeah.
Could we see B-Spatial being used in classrooms?
Absolutely. Imagine classrooms where students can step into these virtual simulations to learn about history or science
Wow.
or practice public speaking.
That would be amazing.
Yeah. VR really caters to different learning styles.
Right.
So it could potentially make education more engaging and effective.
It would definitely be a big change from the traditional, lectures and textbooks.
Yeah, for sure.
We've talked a lot about the potential benefits, but I do want to touch on potential downsides as well.
Of course.
Are there ethical considerations that we should be thinking about with this kind of technology?
Yeah, with any new technology, it's really important to be mindful of potential risks.
Right.
For example, we need to ensure that B-Spatial is used in a way that respects privacy and confidentiality. Data security is really paramount.
Yeah, especially when you're dealing with young people and sensitive information about their mental health.
Exactly.
Absolutely. And it's not just about protecting their data.
Right.
We also need to make sure that the VR experiences themselves are designed in a way that is safe
Yes.
and appropriate for young users.
Yeah, we need to consider things like the potential for addiction or overuse.
Okay.
It's important to strike that balance
Right.
between using VR as a tool for learning and growth
Uh-huh.
and making sure it doesn't become a substitute for real-world interaction.
Right. So it's really about integrating B-Spatial into that holistic approach to well-being.
Exactly.
That includes, all the important things like physical activity, social connections, and spending time in nature, all of that good stuff.
Absolutely.
Thinking about this technology and all of its potential
Yeah.
really makes me wonder, like, what if something like this had been available when we were teenagers?
Oh, yeah.
How do you think that would have changed your own experiences?
It's a great question. I think having access to a platform like B-Spatial could have really helped me navigate some of the challenges I faced as a teenager,
Like what?
particularly around things like social anxiety and career exploration.
Yeah, I think for me, having that safe space to practice certain situations
Right.
and really build up my confidence in those areas
Yeah.
would have made a huge difference.
Absolutely.
It makes you think about all the young people who could benefit
Yeah.
from having these kinds of tools available to them. Well, this has been a fascinating deep dive into B-Spatial. We've covered so much ground,
We have.
from the technology to the science, the potential benefits and risks,
Right.
and even the broader societal impact. It's been an amazing conversation.
Yeah, really exciting development.
Yeah, one that I'm definitely going to be following closely.
Yeah.
So to all of you listening out there, we encourage you to learn more about B-Spatial
Yeah.
and think about how it might impact your own lives and your communities.
Yeah, great point.
Thanks for joining us on this journey into the future of well-being. We'll see you next time for another deep dive where